Have you ever wondered what it would take to get accepted into physical therapy school, even if you have a low GPA? In a moment, I'm going to share with you the number one mistake that we have seen low GPA students make that has held them back from getting accepted into physical therapy school. And yes, it's possible to get into PT school even if you have a low GPA. We've seen it so many times. However, if you make this mistake, you might hold yourself back from ever having a shot of becoming a physical therapist. So if you want to be a PT and you have a low GPA, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And of course, after this episode, I want to know in the comments below, what did this episode say to you and what are going to be your next steps? Because that's what matters. Now, before I dive in and tell you what this big mistake is, my name is Joseph Scoogie. I'm a physical therapist. I'm also one of the co-founders of Pre-PT Grind, where for years we've specialized in helping students get accepted into physical therapy school without wasting time or money. And so it's because it's your career and it's something that many of you are passionate about. And if this is what you have been called to do, we are here to help you. And we've worked with students for nearly a decade now. So everything we talk about is not theory. It's not something we read in a book. It's things that we have seen with well over 1,000 students that we have privately coached over the last decade. And they get in school. In fact, up until now, we have a 92% first-time acceptance rate with all the students we've worked with. So this is not theory. This is just what works. And we were you because we were pre-PTs once upon a time. So let's talk about this big mistake and then we'll talk about next steps afterwards. Is that all right? So here's the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake is that as a low GPA student, what we have found is that a lot of low GPA students are looking for confirmation that if they keep doing what they're currently doing, they're going to be okay. Here's what I mean by that. So let's say you have a 2.7 GPA, right? A 2.7 overall, 2.7 prerequisite. And one of the things that we do, and I've seen this a lot, is we love to share stories, right? So we literally have, whether it's a masterclass we do, whether it's a panel that we do. In fact, we have this one panel. If you're interested in it, just message us, like email our team and we'll give you the panel. So we did a panel and it had low GPA students on it. Like it was maybe 5 or 6 of our low GPA students. One of them had started with a GPA as low as a 2.4 after graduating college. Another one had a 2.54. We had someone with a 2.6, a 2.7, a 2.8. So we basically covered the range of low GPAs that are, well, really below a 3.0, right? Technically below a 3.2 is considered a lower GPA. But anyway, so these were all below 3.0 students. And one thing that I've heard sometimes is students will listen to that panel or panels like it, and they're looking for hope, yes, which hope is good, but they're also looking for confirmation that, oh, someone else did it with my GPA, I'm gonna be okay. Let me just keep doing what I'm currently doing and hope that it all works out. And that doesn't actually get you into physical therapy school. Now, follow me here real quick. So let's say I have a 2.6 GPA. I listen to a panel like this. I'm looking for confirmation, not guidance, not strategy, not direction on what I can do better or what I could shift or what I can, adjust in my application journey so that I can have a higher chance of getting a yes to a school. I hear it. And if I'm looking for confirmation, here's the mistake that I make. If I'm looking for confirmation, I will listen to a story of someone else who had a similar struggle to me. And instead of thinking, oh, here are the things that they did differently, here are the strategies they implemented to become a strong applicant, I'll think to myself, oh, they had a low GPA, I have a low GPA, I think it'll work out, right? And I see that all the time, like where we'll have students that are messaging us and they're like, yeah, I feel great now because I saw someone that had a GPA about the same as mine, and because they got into school, I'm just gonna keep going. And I'm like, that's not actually what happened, right? Like you missed the second piece. The second piece was that's where they started. And so yes, there's hope that it's possible for you to get into school, because y'all check it out. Like if you have a low GPA, like, and maybe you've had this conversation before, if you have a low GPA, especially below a 3.0, most advisors would actually tell you to have a backup option, like a backup career just in case, because they don't know how to help you stand out. And it's because most people think you have to have a 3.7 or 3.8 or 3.9 or 4.0 to become a strong applicant, which is not entirely true. And I'll talk to you about why that is here in just a second. And I hope this is making sense so far, by the way, right? But advisors typically will tell you to have a backup career. And the reason for that is because it's a safety net, right? The problem with that is that a backup career might not be what fulfills you, right? So if physical therapy is your calling, like this is the thing that you're like, yo, this is what I have been called to do, then having a backup career is you saying, okay, I'll do this other career even though it doesn't give me life, even though it doesn't fulfill me, even though it's not what I want to do for the duration of my life, right? And the reason why you're giving that is because, like I said, like they don't know what else to tell you, right? So, but for us, we're telling you, no, it's possible to get accepted after starting with a low GPA, right? But if I'm looking for confirmation, I will miss the part two. And the part two is there's just certain strategies and certain things you're going to have to do differently in order to stand out, because you're competing against people that have a 3.7, that have a 3.8, that have a 3.9, that have a 4.0. So my strategies just have to be different. And that's the mistake. The mistake that we see is I have heard so much of the have a backup career from my advisor that now when I see this story of this student that had a 2.4 and got accepted into PT school, in my mind, because I have a 2.6, I'm going to be okay. And I'll just keep doing what I was doing. And then when I apply, I get rejected, which confuses me. Are y'all following, right? So it's like now I apply, I get rejected, and I'm like, wait, like, but I don't get it. This person here had a similar experience to mine. They had a similar journey to me. They had a super low GPA. They got accepted. How come I didn't get accepted? You know, and then we start telling ourselves, man, if they just bring me in for the interview, if they just hear my story, then it'll just work out. It's like, whoa, hold on. There's something we're missing. And this is the crack that I see a lot of low GPA students falling into is now, instead of asking different questions, they just assume that everything is going to be fine and dandy. Everything is just going to be okay. Everything will just take care of itself because I've heard a story that inspired me, right? And that, I'm telling you, is a mistake. It's a mistake. Because what you may have missed, right, or what a lot of students may miss is that these students that are telling you their story are also at the same time telling you that there's certain things they had to shift. Right? So anytime we tell you a story, those are typically students that are clients of ours, right? So their shift had a lot to do with working with our team, right? However, even more detailed than that, they'll tell you, well, I had a low overall GPA and a low prerequisite GPA, and I realized that my prerequisite GPA could actually change quite a bit, right? Because the number of classes was far less than my overall, right? Because your overall is all the credits you've ever had from your freshman year. Does that make sense? Right? So they're like, ooh, I realized that I had 4 or 5 C's in my prereqs, and I realized that if I just learned how to study better, shift my study strategies, and turn those 4 or 5 C's into A's, then my prerequisite GPA can jump from a 2.6 to a much higher GPA. In fact, we had a student, her name was Taylor Kong, and Taylor is actually currently a physical therapist. So the story ended well, but she was one of our clients when she was a pre-PT. And the first time she applied, she actually shared this in one of our panels. The first time she applied, she had a 2.7 for her prerequisite GPA, right? And then she applied, got rejected. If you have a low GPA and you haven't learned the strategies that will actually help you get accepted, the reason why it happens is because when I'm applying to a school, the school has certain things they're nervous about, certain things they're afraid of, and they're afraid that you won't be able to finish their program. You won't be able to succeed academically, and that matters to them, like big time, right? Because number one, it if they feel like you won't be able to finish their program, it affects their success rate, right? So if like 25% of the class doesn't make it through, or 50% of the class doesn't make it through their PT program, it looks bad for them. And it's also less money they make, right? Because those are clients technically that they lost, right? And so it's not good for the school overall. And they're also looking at, is this someone that we believe will be able to handle the board exam when it comes time for that, right? And so when they're looking at you, they're seeing you as a risk. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, how do I position myself, even though my past was not exactly what they may be looking for, how do I turn my story around so that I am no longer a risk to the school I'm applying to? Does that make sense, right? This is a huge shift in perspective, right? And so when you start thinking like the school, then you start acting differently and you start doing different things in order to stand out. So with Taylor, right? She applies the first time, the school see her as a risk, so she gets rejected. She's like, okay, what can I control? This is now when we start thinking, what are the strategies that I can leverage as a low GPA student to get accepted, right? So she had a 2.7 for her prereq the first time. She said, all right, what can I control? Well, I can learn how to study better. I can learn how to retain information better. And I can retake my prerequisite classes that are C's or below, and I can get A's. And she did exactly that. She retook them, got A's, that 2.7 prerequisite GPA turned into a 3.7 prerequisite GPA. Now, if you're applying to school and you can show the school that upward trajectory, right, where you're like, no, the first time I had a 2.7, now I have a 3.7. Think about how the school now sees you. They're like, whoa, you may have had a tough start, but the version of you now, oh yeah, we actually think you're ready to handle the rigor of PT school. And so now their belief that you'll actually make it through goes up, and their trust that you're a good fit for their program also goes up, which means that they're more likely to give you a shot. Does that make sense? And by no surprise, the second time she applied, she got accepted. She's currently a physical therapist. So as a student, ask yourself, am I looking for confirmation that the path I'm on is going to just work out if I just keep doing what I'm doing? Or am I looking for strategy? Am I looking to ask the right questions? Am I looking to say, okay, that person had the same struggles I do. What did they do differently? Right? And that last question, that what did they do differently, is the key, or has the potential to hold the key to you becoming a much stronger applicant. And this is where I see students wasting time and money. How? Because they'll just keep winging it, keep doing it the way they were doing it before, apply, get rejected, and then a year later, we're right back to where we were before, instead of asking the right question. What is it that these other students are doing differently in order to stand out? And once you show up that way, then things start working in your favor. So don't fall into the delusion that if you just kind of keep winging, especially if you have a low GPA, that if you just kind of keep going, it'll just work out. No. We got to operate differently, because we're playing in a game with people that have 3.7s, 3.8s, 3.9s, and 4.0. So we have to show up very differently. We have to be meticulous with where we choose to go to school, which programs we select. We have to be meticulous with our strategy after we lock in those schools. We have to be meticulous with, what we can control, focusing on what we can control and understanding the mind of the school. If you're not operating from that standpoint, then truly you are guessing, right? And that's where now you'll start thinking that your advisor's advice of having a backup career makes sense, even if it might not, right? And so those are the biggest keys as a low GPA student. And that, like I said, is the number one mistake that we've seen students make. However, if you can start asking the right questions, then you'll realize that the answers already exist, because you are not the first. You're not the first person to experience what you're going through. You're not the first person to struggle with the obstacles that you're facing. And if you're not the first, that means that somebody else has been in your shoes before and they figured it out. And if they could figure it out, you can too. So I hope this was a mix of a wake-up call and also belief that it is possible. However, also just a perspective shift on how you're going to have to show up, or how we've seen students need to show up in order to have a really good shot of getting accepted into physical therapy school. So I hope that this was valuable to you. And if it was, please let me know in the comments below, what did this episode say to you? And if you would like a massive head start and access to some of our best tips on how to become a stronger applicant, go to acceptanceguides.com. We got you. Go to acceptanceguides.com. You'll notice that you'll get access to 3 free guides that'll get you massively closer to your dream of becoming a physical therapist, and then our team will take care of you from there. Those 3 guides are free. So go to acceptanceguides.com. We got you. You shouldn't have to give up on your dream, and you also shouldn't have to feel lost on your journey as well. Acceptanceguides.com. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please be sure to share this out with anyone who you believe would benefit from this or value this. And of course, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all the things, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.